The cosmological argument makes a case for the existence of God. The argument in its most simple form is that the existence of the universe and everything in it is proof that God exists. Most of the argument hinges on the principle of causation. Aquinas is one of the philosophers who argues in favor of the cosmological argument. His main stance can be broken down into three different points. The first point that Aquinas makes is the change argument. This is simply that all changes have a cause. There is nothing that changes on its own. For example, rocks don't just decide to erode and change shape. Water or wind acts on them as an outside force, causing the rock to change shape. Aquinas' second point is the cause argument. With this point, Aquinas states that everything that exists has a cause. There are no uncaused things in the world. Further evidence of this can be seen with Isaac Newton's first law of motion, which states that objects at rest tend to stay at rest unless acted upon by an outside force, thus further highlighting that the impetus of causation is necessary for the occurrence of action. The third point rests on the principle of contingent and necessary beings. A contingent being is something that can or cannot exist. It is feasible for such a thing to exist, but it does not have to for the universe to exist in the same way in which it currently does. Such a being, for example, would be a unicorn. One could exist, but in our universe, they don't. There are some things that could not exist, for example, a square circle. It is not possible to imagine such a thing, therefore it cannot exist. A necessary being is something that has to exist, and Aquinas makes the argument that not every being can be contingent. Therefore, there must be at least one necessary being, and for Aquinas, that being is God. The philosopher Samuel Clarke chimes in at this point as well, and states that all beings are either dependent, that is, they require something to bring them into being, or self-existent. Clarke argues that not all beings can be dependent, therefore there must be something that is self-existent, that is, God. The Kalam argument, that comes from a Muslim tradition, made by William Lane Craig, is another way of looking at the cosmological argument. It states that whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore it has a cause, and that cause would be God. Craig also addresses some of the problems that come with the cosmological argument. For example, why does the initial cause have to be God? And where did God come from? Craig says that since God created matter, he exists immaterially, and since God created time, he exists outside of time. Therefore, God would not have to be bound by the laws of physics because he created the laws of physics, according to Craig. Cosmological argument rests on the idea of the principle of sufficient reason, or more commonly referred to as the PSR. The PSR can be broken down into two separate points, PSR1 and PSR2. The PSR1 states that whatever exists has an explanation for its existence. This is basically saying that everything that is has a reason why it is. PSR1 is asserting that there are no random things that exist without a reason, and all things come from something else. PSR2 states that for every positive fact that a being has, there is a causal explanation to why it obtains that fact. This again stating the principle of causality that is so crucial to the cosmological argument. In summation, the cosmological argument states that something cannot come from nothing. Therefore, the initial something must have been created by a God who does not need the physical universe to exist.